Good morning and welcome to day 5. Today I'm heading back to the travel album to do more planning, but I like this part of the planning stage more than printing my photographs, I have to admit. When I work on a plan ahead album, I have to keep reminding myself that the goal is to put some time into the planning stages now and have the scrapping stage just fly by more quickly. And because so many of the decisions have already been made at that point. When I'm scrapbooking without a plan, when I scrap slowly, it's not because it takes me too long to cut paper or apply adhesive or anything like that. It's because I'm dithering over which photos and what sizes should they be, what colors am I going to use, which pattern papers, where things should go on the page. And the where things should go on the page thing can be like hours of dithering in itself because every single thing I pick up has that same potential to just dither and move it around a lot. A few years ago, I adopted this philosophy that I call stick and go, where I never make a layout just by moving things around without adhesive. As soon as I cut the paper, it tends to have glue and get stuck straight away. And that helped me cut my decision time down a lot. But it's still a big chunk of time to help me decide just on a page-by-page basis where things are going to go. There are times when it's really helpful for me to have more of a plan. And if I do that planning bit ahead, and I can do that bit of planning like in all sorts of little tiny chunks of time, if I just have a couple minutes, I can do this step then. And then when I do have the time to scrapbook, I can do this thing that very rarely happens in my life, and that's to make multiple pages in one space of time. A lot of the layouts that you end up seeing on my blog or in videos and things like that are pages that I've had to do in maybe 2 or 3 sessions with interruptions. But every once in a while, if I have a real plan, I can scrapbook so much faster that I just fly through. And I really enjoy that it feels like I'm in the zone and I can just make all these pages. So that otherwise is pretty much impossible to me. So the planning ends up worthwhile. And it also, I'm not one who, I wouldn't go to a crop and be like, I need to do 50 pages this weekend and make them all really, really simple as a means to an end. The number is not my goal. But when I can make pages that are still in the style that I like, but have them go a little bit quicker and not have to keep stopping and starting, that feels really, really awesome to me as a nice side effect. So to make all this happen, I start where I left off with the photo planning, and I move to page sketches and go-to designs. Sketches are a nice concrete concept, so we'll start with that. The easiest way I find to do this is with Pinterest. But if you prefer the style of just one sketch artist, you might find that they have a website or a book that makes that an easier option for you. I like to gather a range of sketches all in one place, but some scrappers prefer to have separate boards, like everything with one photo is all on its own sketchboard. All the sketches with just one photo are all in one board, and then you have a separate Pinterest board or a separate folder with all these sketches that are 2 photos. There's definitely no right or wrong there. It's just a case of what works better for the way you think. And for me, I like to be able to look through the whole thing all at once. So I keep them all in just one big folder. I love to do this with my photo prints actually printed out and sitting on my desk. But if you prefer to print as you go, you can also do this with your photo library open in one window on your computer and then the sketches in another window. So you can either tab back and forth between the two or have them open side by side. Then it's as simple as looking at the photos that you have to scrap and assigning them to a sketch. Really, really simple. If you work best with printed information, you can just print the sketch right then and grab the photos and the sketch that you just printed and stick them in a page protector and put that in your album. I find that is by and large the easiest way to get this started. If you work best at the computer screen though, you can make a note in the comments of the sketch to indicate which photos or topic you'll use with that page design. And that can work too. But I tend to not have room on my craft desk to have my computer. And I have room for something small like my phone, but I like to see the sketch bigger. So I'm afraid I print on paper and then I just recycle the paper when I'm done, obviously. There are literally thousands and thousands of scrapbook pages and scrapbook page sketches on Pinterest, and there are a real variety of styles. When you choose one sketch to look at, the suggested pins that will pop up below on that page, they may reveal a new sketch artist that you've never seen before, or they may help you find sketches from a variety of people that are kind of similar and would work well together. Throughout this course, I'm adding every single day to a board of sketches, and you can find that link in today's PDF and email if it's something that you would want to follow along with. But that's totally, totally optional, and you are definitely able to find sketches to create your own perfect set in a folder. You just need a simple search for something like scrapbook page sketches, or you can clarify scrapbook page sketches, 2 photos, or lots of journaling, or things like that. In addition to specific sketches, I also have a few go-to designs that I make note of at this point in the process. Go-to designs are simply a page design I've done so many times that I don't really need an actual sketch in front of me to make the page without much dithering. You may or may not have those sorts of page designs that you repeat. Please don't worry if you don't. It doesn't mean anything that you don't, other than you don't tend to repeat designs, or if you do, you haven't done them to the point where you kind of do them by heart. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But today I want to share one of mine with you. And indeed, some of you may recognize this format because I've used it so many times before. When it comes to go-to designs, I still choose the photos and put them in the page protector. But instead of having to print out a sketch, I just scribble a little Post-it note to remind myself of the plan with those photos. So the Post-it note for the page I'm going to show you now read quadrants from 6x6 paper pad. And then I had 2 photos in the page protector. Because I know every page in this album is going to start with a sheet of plain 12x12 craft cardstock, that's one big decision I don't need to make. Makes things much faster. Then I can pull one 6x6 paper pad from my shelf, flip through, and select 4 sheets for the quadrant background, plus any I might want to cut into smaller pieces for embellishment. The 6x6 sheets will need just a little bit of trimming to make it all fit while leaving that craft border around the edge, but that only takes a second. You can do it by just keeping them 6x6 and overlapping in the middle, but I find I get cleaner lines if I cut them down. I tend to choose 2 with a similar color, so those can go on the diagonal, and then 2 other pieces with contrast make up the other corners. I ink the edges in brown usually for a bit of definition and adhere the papers to the page, leaving that border of craft all around the outside edge. Then I'm already ready for photos. My go-to option here is 2 4x6 in the same direction, like these 2 portraits, matted with a neutral pattern paper that I cut to a small edge and ink again. The photos go directly side by side, which is a look that I really love, but I know not everyone loves it. If you prefer space between the 2, that's fine. You just separate them before you cut the mat so that you get it the right size, no problem. The photos go toward the middle of the page, so the center of the quadrants is covered, but then I move it over to one side or the other to leave room for title and journaling before it'll be finished. I look for a pattern with a horizontal design somewhere in the mix to cut into a strip, and I'm going to put 1 strip above the photo and then add embellishment with boxes of paper or sometimes stickers. And I tuck some behind the photos and layer some on top of the photos if it works just a bit. Then I repeat that process on the opposite corner of the photo block. So here I did top right and then bottom left. So the embellishment is on a diagonal line with the photos in the middle. Some elements are going to be exactly the same, like the horizontal strip of paper, but others will be similar in size but not identical, like the bus ticket and the square sentiment card here. This leaves me with one top corner of the page quite open, and that's a good place to add some embellishment starting from right at the top of the page and moving down. I love if I can include something with an arrow here to direct the eye from that top left corner, because that's where we naturally start reading if we read languages that print from left to right. And I can make that arrow point down the page or over the page to where all the important stuff is sitting. I also tend to repeat something from the embellishment areas that are already on the page. So that's another strip of that horizontal patterned paper. And time for some different texture in this embellishment. So I look for something other than plain paper or stickers that I can add to all 3 areas of embellishment, like this sheet of cork stickers. I just choose 3 that can fit. The title then will fit below the photo, just below the photo, to give it a bit more of a frame, really. And I almost always use 2 styles of letter for my title. The journaling will fit to the left of the photos, and usually I go for a journaling card here, unless the pattern papers in the background are perfectly suited for writing, and they're usually not. I ink those edges and I add a few layers there to make enough room for the journaling and also to match the layered tone of everything else. Then I just try to find something small to sprinkle all over the page to make it feel finished to me. Sometimes that's ink or mist, but lately it's quite likely to be sequins or enamel dots if I have the right color. I used to use wood veneer for this step a lot too, and I recently moved all my wood veneer in my scrap space so that it's closer and in my eye line, so I'm hoping that will help me remember to use it a little more often. Okay, so this is the sort of design I've done so many times because I enjoy these steps. I like how it looks with basically every 6x6 paper pad I've ever brought home, and it leaves me with a good balance for 2 photos plus a reasonable amount of writing on the page, and that's a combination I use a lot, 2 photos plus some writing. You may have different page designs that you can identify as your go-to designs, and then you don't even need a printed sketch. Give them a name, give them a post-it note, you'll be good to go. But that is how I make a plan at this point. I combine that photo planning with a big collection of sketches, and you can, of course, make sketches if you like, but I find that is far more time consuming than just picking a bunch. So at this point in this kind of planning, I try to go with either designs that I could already do by heart or pages that I can just print out rather than making them from scratch. I hope you find that helpful, and I'll see you again tomorrow.